introduce this evening's distinguished guests. The Philadelphia design community is a fiercely competitive, yet wonderfully welcoming society of brilliant professionals. And tonight we are honored to host 5 of its most incredible female members. Women whose input has had a groundbreaking and lasting impact on the profession and its education. This may be the first time they are all assembled together in one room, and certainly the first time they're all sharing their stories together. And we are honored that when we asked them to participate, they said yes. I would like to take this time to thank David Schwartz for compiling our introductory video, and Thomas Daly, my husband, who truly understands what it means to be busy. Again, please hold your questions till the end. And now, in alphabetical order, because that's the only way we can figure out how to do it, I'd like to introduce Floss Barber. Here's our panel. I'll wait. Okay, Floss Barber brings to each project. Floss Barber brings to each project 30 years of interior design, planning, and management experience. As principal of her own firm, her distinct blend of leadership and vision is the primary reason for continued success in the achievement of design excellence and client satisfaction. In each project, she determines the design direction and assures the project's successful completion. Her personal contact with each client is an integral part of the process. Founded in 1986, Floss Barber Incorporated, a women's business enterprise, has successfully completed projects throughout the United States, particularly along the East Coast. The firm's skill in developing corporate interiors has led to commissions in all industries. Her work has appeared in numerous publications, locally and nationally, and has been in the Interior Design Magazine's list of giants since 1998. Floss is a Drexel 100 Distinguished Alumni, the University's Hall of Fame, and contributes to the design school annually with an award to a graduating senior. Notable clients include Emerald Lagasse, Herbal Callahan, Sauls Mongaluzzi, Berwyn Corporation, Hilton, 1616 Walnut, the Icon Building, the Broadcast Board of Governors at GSA Project, National Liberty Museum, University of Pennsylvania, Bravo Hotel, Sands Las Vegas, and Mohegan Sun. Floss's energy and enthusiasm for all facets of life and business inspire both her team and her clients. Throughout Floss's career, she has chaired and supported various organizations and has participated in student critiques for Drexel University and Moore College of Art and Design. Floss Barber. Karen Daroff. Karen founded Daroff Design in 1973 and has led her firm to national and international prominence. Regarded for her experience in design innovation, sustainable and cost-effective projects, Karen has received numerous awards for design excellence, including Contract Magazine Designer of the Year Award, Hospitality Design Magazine Platinum Circle Hall of Fame, named one of the 50 best women-owned businesses in Pennsylvania by former Governor Tom Ridge, Philadelphia University's Leader of Innovation Award, and the Distinguished Alumni Award from her alma mater, Moore College of Art and Design. Active in civic affairs, Karen has served as a member of the board of Philadelphia Chamber of Commerce, Moore College of Art and Design, the University of the Arts, and is currently on the board of the Greater Philadelphia Film Office. She is a passionate mentor to students in architecture and interior design and has served as a guest critic and speaker at Harvard University, University of Pennsylvania, Temple University, Drexel University, Moore, and Philadelphia University. She has also been a keynote speaker at the Rotterdam Film Festival, HD Miami, New York, Las Vegas, and Asia and Hong Kong. Her client lists include Disney, Comcast, NBC Universal, Sony, Viacom, Paramount, Marriott International, Hilton, Starwood, Hyatt, Ritz-Carlton, Harrah's Entertainment, Mohegan Sun, MGM, Caesars, Citizens Bank, the Franklin Institute, Philadelphia Airport, JetBlue, Southwest Airlines, and American Airlines. Karen Daroff. Barbara Eberlein. Barbara Eberlein has built a national reputation for expertise in the restoration of significant historic structures of the 19th and early 20th centuries. Barber inspires her unique, gifted staff, always incorporating advances in materials, design, and technology. A longtime professional member of the American Society of Interior Designers, she is NCIDQ certified and has pursued further studies in architectural history and decorative arts. Barber's work has been published extensively in Architectural Digest and Period Homes. She wrote the foreword to the new edition of Michael Kathman's book on architecture, Architect Horace Trumbauer, and has recently written an introduction for a collection at Christie's, New York. Barber has an ongoing commitment to design education and serves as a guest critic at Moore College of Art and Design, the Art Institute of Philadelphia, and Drexel University. She has appeared on national television and frequently lectures on design and preservation. Her numerous awards include 26 ASID Design Excellence Awards, their Designer of Distinction Award, 14 IDA Design Awards, the Preservation Alliance's Preservation Achievement Award, CCRA's Historic Preservation Award, and the Award for Residential Design from Preservation Pennsylvania. Barber is currently president of the Institute of Classical Architecture and Art Philadelphia chapter, served on committees at the Philadelphia Museum of Art, the Royal Oak Foundation, the Rodin Museum, the Philadelphia Antique Show, the Franklin Institute, the Union League of Philadelphia, Design Philadelphia, and the Athenaeum of Philadelphia. Barber. Two more. Marguerite Rodgers. Meg arrived in Philadelphia as a college freshman in 1972 and soon began to explore media ranging from fibers to wood. By the end of her junior year, she had launched a long-term independent study program using 18th century construction techniques and the help of friends to build a barn in her parents' property in Maine. Meg's talent for design and her aptitude for construction led to a series of galleries, boutique, and residential commissions following her graduation from the University of the Arts. She started at Moore. Frequently collaborating with other artists, Meg built the furniture in her own woodworking shop while working toward a certificate in interior design. In 1993, Meg took on the design of Striped Bass, a nationally recognized establishment. Esquire magazine restaurant critic John Mariani said she showed Philadelphia what was possible at the high end. Striped Bass was designated Restaurant of the Year by Esquire, an honor that would 10 years later be associated with La Croix at the Rittenhouse, another Rodgers commission. Meg's work for residential clients was also winning accolades, designing in Boston, Connecticut, Philadelphia, Manhattan, and the Bahamas. Meg earned the respect and the loyalty of clients who appreciated the firm's steadfast commitment to listening well, designing artfully, and seeing all stages of each installation through. Today, with a staff of 12, her projects range from private residences and condominiums to hotels and restaurants. Her love of culture, landscape, and antiques takes her around the world. Her passion for movies and conversations inspires her work. Meg Rodgers. And finally, last but not least, Kimberly Williams. Kim's early career includes winning the Interior Design Council Scholarship Award. She joined Pomerantz & Company, then Philadelphia National Bank, creating an in-house design department. She gained marketing experience at Knoll International, all leading her to start her own business, Williams Designs Associates. After a year, she joined the Philadelphia-based KPA Designing as the Director of Design. Kimberly was recruited by Kling Stubbins in 1994 to start their interior design practice in Philadelphia, becoming a partner 2 years later. Listed by Philadelphia Business Journal as the top firm in the region, Kling Lindquist Interiors was also recognized by Interior Design magazine as one of the top 100 giants, and has remained there since. While becoming one of the most prestigious interior design practices in the country, with diversified Fortune 500 client base, they were acquired by Jacobs. Kim was named the National Director of Interiors and Division Vice President. Jacobs Interiors is currently listed as number 2 for interior design giants and number 3 in corporate interiors designs. Kimberly's awards include Pennsylvania's Best Women in Business, the Philadelphia Business Journal's prestigious Women of Distinction, Business Journal's 40 and Under Award, and multiple design awards from IIDA, AIA, and ASID. Her project work, interviews, and written work are widely published. Kimberly served on multiple boards, including Kling Stubbins, and currently serves on the executive board of Cornet, Greater Philadelphia chapter. Passionate about students, Kimberly taught for 16 years at the Art Institute and created the Kling Stubbins Art Annual Student Design Competition, 13 years in the running. She regularly serves on academic and professional juries, including the best of the econ. Kim Williams. And finally, Jim Miller. Sorry.
Keep that quiet.
Sorry. Our moderator this evening is Jim Miller, who has over 25 years of experience in the Philadelphia design community in the marketing and business development arenas, uniquely qualifying him to share his experience and extensive business contacts with his students. Jim has also 10 years of educational experience prior to joining Moore's faculty. Jim teaches for me.
Yes.
He is proud to be a 1994 graduate of Drexel University and has been published in Hospitality Design magazine. I am proud to be his colleague. I am proud to hand the evening over to him and our distinguished guests, and thank you again.
All right. Well, thank you, Donna. And I have to say I'm honored to be seated here with the 5 most important interior designers in Philadelphia. And so we're just going to get started. So my first question is for Floss. So over 30 years ago, you started your firm with a fully pigment table, an answering machine, and a bike service. What is it that you did to set yourself apart? What vision did you have to set yourself apart from your competition?
Well, what I saw was missing was the desire to push the envelope in Philadelphia. We're a very quicker city, and I really didn't see design being present in the interiors around town. So I struck out and decided that I was going to, see what I was made of and have my own agenda and create an interior design firm that was really design first. And that's how it came about.
Great. And it's worked for you.
So far so good. Yeah, so far so good. I would say we're kind of an iconic boutique firm. And in talking about branding, for a while I was thinking about, why did I pick Floss Barber? Why didn't I pick some fictitious name? Karen. That's hard because it's your name, right? So a while back I was thinking, well, maybe I'd do FB Design Studio or something like that. But while I was doing the Sugar House Casino, a woman named Kathy Johansson, who was doing the branding for the casino, she had done Frank Geary's business card. And Frank Geary's business card says Frank, right? So I was spending time with her in meetings. I thought, I'll pick her brain about Floss Barber and the brand Floss Barber. And she says, well, what I know of you, she says, I think your name is perfect. She goes, Floss is very ethereal and is creative, and Barber's very strategic and very solid. So she says, I wouldn't mess with that name at all. So I would say we're ethereal and creative and sort of out of space and solid space. So that's what's worked for me.
Great, thank you very much. All right, so Barbara, your next question is for you. And you've mentioned that interior design is a combination of business, science, and art. Could you expand upon that for our audience?
It's one of those things I think isn't stressed in academic programs enough. We tend to focus on art, and it really is the core of what we do. But if you don't know how materials work, you don't know the properties of things, you don't know how to anticipate how things are going to age or patina, you can't provide the amount of technological support for your work that you actually need. Because these things are born on paper and they're wonderful two-dimensional drawings, but somehow, at some point, this has to get built in 3 dimensions on planet Earth, and it has to stand up, and it has to function. And you need to know the scientific background behind that and the technological background. And likewise, you may survive for a year or two, but if your business skills aren't really attuned to the marketplace and the needs that are there, you'll find yourself very quickly sort of falling under the bus. And we learned quickly that understanding contract terms and deadlines and construction schedules and intellectual property rights and all of that was extremely important, not to mention just the psychology of managing client expectations too. That's the other side of the business picture. All of that brings you back to the art part, which is absolutely vital. I always tell people, just start drawing, keep painting, keep sculpting, keep photographing, keep that aesthetic energy going in yourself, because as creative professionals, we have a tendency to just keep putting out putting out, and we're so engaged in giving our creative process to everybody else that we forget to take time to put things back in, and you have to.
That's very true.
Yeah.
Anybody else want to comment on that?
No, I thought that was very well said.
Yes.
Totally agree.
Well, and I think also the five of you obviously are very talented designers, but it's the business side of things that have put you here where you are. So I think that's important to note.
And I think sometimes young designers see the flash and don't realize the work that's behind it. So it's really 90% work and 10% flash. To enjoy the flash, you've got to put the 90% work in. So it's good you started up with that, Barber.
Just like Einstein said.
Yes. All right, so our next question is for Kimberly. And so Kimberly, over 20 years ago, you were approached by Carl Clark, then president of the Cleveland Partnership, to come on board and run the interior design practice of the firm. He walked you into a desolate studio in a state of disarray and said, "This could all be yours." So
The tumbleweed's rolling to me.
you took the challenge, and the rest is history. Can you share with us your journey in this male-dominated firm?
Well, actually, I took on that challenge with some caveats.
Okay.
Kind of my eyes open going into it. One was that it was set up as a separate cost center. It wasn't going to be a department working for the other disciplines. It wasn't going to be just a discipline. It was set up like on a market sector, and that way we would be able to track all the financials. Because that's the toughest thing for them to recognize is that interiors is a large part of the financial picture. It's just not being calculated that way.
Yes.
Or looked at it that way. And if it's looking at it through the architect's eyes, it would never be that way. So that was one stipulation, and the other was that I would work directly for Carl, that it would not work for the architectural department or anybody who would associate with it. It would stand independently working for the chairman's office. And I think those two things allowed us to be autonomous, create our own business within the business, and build that practice and sort of prove ourselves, if you will, before we needed to sort of look back and say, okay, we're part of you now, we're here, and the financials are in black and white. They couldn't ignore that. So that's why I became a partner in 2 years. Because they gave me this, they said, well, if you make this amount of money, we'll nominate you for partner, thinking that that would be like unachievable, right? And that happened in less than 2 years. So I think because of those reasons, it was easier to work within that dominant organization. We kind of set our own pace. We had a great team of talent that was successful in their own right. And so we kind of came to the firm as, like I said, a peer in the organization. And soon after that, I was on the board of directors. And then it was dealing with, Tom, Mike, Carl. It wasn't male, female. So I think I kind of dealt with it at that level. So.
Yeah, so you were accepted into the men's club.
Yeah, they weren't making money.
Yes. Well, it's funny, when I worked with you, you showed me the invitation for the annual board meeting. And at 7 o'clock was cognac and cigars.
Yeah, it was definitely, it's moved forward since then, but it's definitely a male-dominated organization. It has been, still is.
Yes.
I was the only A shareholder that was female. Most shareholders.
Is it still that way?
It was still that way at the time of the acquisition. Yep. And, that was 25 shareholders at that point. There were 8 shareholders. They eventually added an E-level shareholder ranks that had 2 females that were added at one point, which was basically taking the senior associates and making them E shareholders. But yeah, it was a tough crowd.
And they were
I think I
for you.
mentioned to you that, when you're at a board meeting, that was, like I said, it was just, Tom, Mike, Carl that you're dealing with. When you go to A and B shareholder meeting, it was a little strange.
Yes.
To say the least, to be such a minority.
Yes. Well, you're not anymore. So thank you. So our next question is for Karen. So Karen, you recently celebrated your 41st year in business. What has being a women-owned business meant for you in helping to survive and actually thrive during downturns in the economy?
That's a great question. very early on, we experienced exactly what Kim described, that it's a male-dominated profession. And we would go up against the big guys, and it was very challenging. And originally, we started out as an interior design firm, and we didn't have an architectural arm. And one time, I was sitting in Chicago on a panel, I think it was for Architectural Record or one of the architectural magazines, and all the fellows sitting around the table at this round table were talking about how they were going to have an interior design department. They were going to start interior design departments, and I thought they're going to compete with us, because for a long time, architects really didn't care about interiors. And so I came back to Philly and decided I was going to start an architectural firm, and then realized you needed to be an architect to do that. And so we actually recruited Norman Holloway from Kling, who was my boss, and he headed up DEI Architects for a very long time. So we were then able to do architecture as well as interior design without getting letters from the AIA telling us that we were practicing architecture without a license. But then there were different recessions that would come along. For instance, in 1990, we were very heavily vested in what we then called corporate and we're now calling workplace, which means law firms, corporate offices, headquarters, and projects like that. And just overnight, 1990, there was a real estate recession, and all of those office projects just went on hold. There was no movement at all. I thought, what will we do? And I heard about the idea that you could become certified as a woman-owned business, and that would be helpful for public sector work. I read something in one of the magazines about it, and so we applied to become a WBE. And all of this time, since 1990 until now, whenever there is a dip in the economy or a recession or 911, when our various types of projects kind of evaporate, we're able to draw upon that certification and join teams or lead teams as a WBE. We've been very fortunate because we have a very diverse portfolio, and so we are able to maneuver during different recessions and move from workplace projects to hospitality. But in 1990, we got a phone call from, am I going too far on this? Do you want me to just stop? I was going to say we got a call from an architectural firm from Seattle asking us, saying that they were looking for a minority firm to join their team to do work at the Philadelphia International Airport. They were looking for either a WBE or a minority to take a small piece of the project, and that they had hired a very large architectural firm called Gensler to be the lead design. And we had just gotten our certification, but honestly I was really insulted, because I thought, well, we're not interested in just a token role on the project. We happen to be great award-winning designers. And so I said that if we were going to participate, that we would want to have an equal share in the project. And so being a woman in that case helped us to get our foot in the door, but we were able to leverage that opportunity into having a larger role, which gave us the foundation for starting to do aviation work, and that's grown to be a very large part of our practice today.
Thank you. Yeah, I think that's important, because now, Floss, you're a WBE as well. Barber, do you have your?
I have.
Okay, and do you have your certification? Okay. So what's interesting is, in the past, women and minority-owned firms, it was to kind of equal the playing field. But now, it really, those firms are the premier firms. It's not just taking token roles, so it's very interesting.
But there are still smaller firms, and in fact, we were just here the other day because Comcast was having a conference here to invite minority and women and DBE firms to come to learn how they might participate in the new Comcast Center for Innovation and Technology. And a lot of those firms were just startup firms, or one or two people in the firm interested. They were engineering firms or landscaping firms and all different types. And so whether it's private sector or public sector, what these certifications do is it gives you a chance to get a foothold in an area of the profession you might not otherwise be positioned to achieve. And so I always encourage, whenever I speak to women's groups, I always encourage women in business to get their certification, whether they're doing private sector or public sector, because sometimes it can be very useful and advantageous to teams.
Yes. Great, thank you. So our next question is for Meg. So your journey is a fascinating story. Coming to Philadelphia from Maine, studying at Warren PCA, going back to Maine, becoming a woodworker, and opening a restaurant. You were a little busy when you were in your younger years. Can you share with us how those experiences have shaped what you are today as a designer?
I think part of what I've always been as a student, I have a huge curiosity and hunger for learning and really need a lot of creative intellectual stimulation. Part of why I chose not to stay in Maine is that I didn't have enough of that stimulation in the town I grew up in, which is a very small town. In the summertime, it was great. In the wintertime, and that's why I opened the restaurant. That's how it came about, was that we realized that we had not. None of us had lived home in the winter for a long time. I'd gone to boarding school and college, and we thought, well, what are we going to do with ourselves? And we were sitting in a restaurant that a friend owned, and he came over and he said, what do you do with this thing? And he said, I close it and pay the class insurance, which is $100 a year or something like that. And we said, well, and the rent was $100. We said, if we pay that, and can we rent it? He said, yes. And we had no idea what we were going to do. And I ended up borrowing money from a friend, his grandmother, who did this. But it's I think what I've always done is I sort of figure things out as I go, and I'm very organized on my jobs, and what some of these things has taught me is to be very focused and very organized, but at the same time leave myself open for things that can come along and could be a great opportunity.
Yes.
And while I was seemingly jumping around and doing a lot of different things, they've all contributed to helping me be very adaptable, very flexible, solving problems very quickly. Yeah, I think to a great extent very inflexible. When something comes along and someone says, oh, that's a problem, I'll say, no, it's just part of the process. It's a challenge. It's a challenge, it's something that we need to do. So I think all of those experiences have really just contributed to becoming more focused and more determined and more persistent.
Well, I think it's great because your restaurant work is beautiful. And the idea of being a woodworker, knowing constructability, and a restaurant owner, I mean, a client couldn't ask for better
Well,
designers.
briefly a restaurant owner.
Yeah, but long enough to.
Right.
All right. Yes. Okay, thank you. All right. So my next question is for Barbara. So Barbara, you're known as one of Philadelphia's premier residential interior designers. Now, contract designers are always waiting for the next RFP to come out for a corporate project or the announcement of a public sector project that we now, with this economy, all chase after it, pushing each other out of the way. So how do you compete for residential work? And what works and what doesn't work?
Oh, this is a tricky question. Of course, we do a lot of institutional and commercial work too, but it focuses on this work very much. So we'll get the RFPs also. And I commend everybody who does mainly commercial work because they're grueling. It is grueling competition. On the flip side of that, residential work is grueling competition also. I had one client once, and had I known this when she interviewed me, I would not have gone for the interview, but I was designer number 13 that she spoke to. And I thought, oh dear, what was it? But it was a good lesson, this, because you have to think about what was it that that person needed to hear that they weren't hearing. And I grew up with a lot of cats, and I learned from my cats that you back up and be quiet and watch. And you watch, and you listen until you get it. And then you have something to say and something to contribute. So I don't mean that getting new projects in the residential sphere is passive, but it's laying groundwork in a lot of areas that could be fruitful for future business development. It is decidedly nonlinear. That's a word you'll hear me use over and over again. So one of the things that's worked for me is that in order to both raise my level of recognition locally, nationally, there are many things you can do. You can get published. you can advertise, you can hire public relations firms, or you can get involved in your community. And it's that last one that for me has worked the best because A, it's very enriching for me, and you have to be genuine about this. You have to give your time and your focus to organizations and institutions that you truly care about. If you had no business interest in it at all, you would still be there doing that thing. But it does raise the level of awareness of people who are like-minded and attracts people to you.
Mm-hmm.
And then, of course, there's nothing like referrals.
I was just going to
Yes.
say, Barbara, don't you think, we do high-end residential,
Yes.
and it comes through most of our work comes through referrals. But I think residential more than anywhere else, if you do a great job, then those like people tell you must work with Barber, you must work with Floss. It's a referral system more than corporate workplace or hospitality, I would say.
And I think a lot of that is because there's a huge amount of personal anxiety that goes into a client's beginning a project, and it is a long-term, expensive commitment. This isn't 6 months, it's 6 years. And you have to be able to convey calm confidence to them, and you have to create that same calm confidence in them that you've created in yourself.
And then Barbara, it goes from the summer house to the mountain house to the main residence. I mean, so it just... Right, I mean, if you do a good job, it could be a life experience.
Yeah.
Yes. Well, and it is so personal. When we do corporate work, I've had people say to me, let me take that carpet home and show my wife. And it's like, it's not your home. You decide if you like the carpet. It's a whole different animal. Now, how many of your residential projects have you received from doing good corporate projects? Has it transcended over?
Oh, I've had a few.
Okay.
I've had a few where I've had a major person in a firm come to me and the top guy's going to ask you to do his house. I know it puts you in a funny position because when you're doing a major, big corporate job and you're then going to do the residence, you haven't gotten through the first one first, it can get a little tough. Yeah, so yes, it has happened. Yes.
Yeah. Very good. Thank you. So our next question is for Kim. So Kim, prior to joining Jacobs, which I refer to as Clint still,
So do we.
you were a design director at KPA for people that had been in the business for a while. It was kind of Barber Associates.
Yeah.
So when you went to Kim, what was it like to give up the design piece of the business, the design piece of the business, and focus mainly on the business?
Well, I guess you never really give it up, per se. I mean, it's always inside of you, and it's, as we've been talking about, it's part of who you are and how you live your life. But it was kind of easy for me, in a way, because I highly respected this individual, Richard Mark, who I brought on board to be the design director. And he is the national design principal for the firm, has been with me since then. And I think that we have like-minded, we're in sync with design issues, and it's made it very easy. He's incredibly talented, so, it's been wonderful, so.
Yes.
Yeah, but it's only because we trained him before he went there.
Everyone's going to
Richard, raise your arm so everybody knows who you are. Yeah.
But yeah, I think that you're always part of it, you're part of the process, and so that's, one element of it. But, even building a business has design elements in it. And I think what I found really rewarding is building the practice, the strategic aspect of building the team, bringing together incredible talent, being able to market that to clients, satisfying those clients' vision, that repeat business, and just building that is, I think, creative too. So
yes.
I really enjoy that aspect of it as well. And like I said, with a partner like Richard, we've been doing really great things. So thanks to him and all his hard work.
Well, you have surrounded yourself with very talented people.
Absolutely.
So
Absolutely.
congratulations. All right, thank you. So Karen, our next question is for you. So you gained national recognition for your work with Disney over the years. What was your first project that you did for Disney, and what was it like working for the legendary design director, Wing Chow?
Can I say how we got to Disney first?
Yes.
Just to explain. We had designed the historic Sagamore Hotel on Lake George. It's a turn-of-the-century hotel. The sister building to the Mackinac Island Hotel that's in the Christopher Reeve movie, Somewhere Back in Time, I think, or Somewhere in Time. And when that project was published in Interiors magazine, we got a phone call from Wing Chow from Disney. And Wing was a legend even then. And he said, I've seen your project and we are looking for designers who can do theme. Now, I had no idea even what he was talking about, because when we did the Sagamore, what we tried to do was to create an authentic turn-of-the-century experience. And we had Woody station wagons and we had horse and buggies, and it was really a quite wonderful project. But I said, yeah, we do that. And so I created a presentation and I went down and I met with Wing and we just clicked. And so our first project that he gave us was to work with an Orlando architectural firm on a new hotel that was 1,000 rooms. And it was called, at that time it was called Dixie Landings. I think now it's called Port Orleans at Disney. But as we were just beginning on that project, they were about to renovate the Contemporary Hotel, which is the flagship hotel at Disney, and it's where the monorail goes through. And he said, would you be interested to do the interior design on the Contemporary Hotel? And I said, well, isn't it an architectural renovation? And he said, yeah, well, we're gonna go out and look for an architect separately. And I said, well, why? We can do the architecture and the interior design, and we got that project. And so we went from Dixie to the Contemporary, and then from there to do a 3,000 room hotel called Coronado Springs Resort. And then Disney kind of slowed down, and we were then working for Lowe's. We had done the Lowe's PSFS project here. And Lowe's then teamed with Universal Studios, and we then switched over to Universal. But we're now back at Disney, which is a whole nother story.
They took you back.
They did, because we crushed them with the latest hotel we did at Universal. And I was like, Steve Beacham, you can stand up now because I'm the principal. Stand up, let them see you, Stephen. I want to brag too. Architect and principal designer, and Steve and our team did a beautiful job on a new 1,800 room resort that you've all got to go see. It's fabulous. It's mid-century modern, and it's called Cabana Bay Beach Resort. It's really fabulous.
All right, thank you.
You're
And
very
apply for
welcome.
Universal. All right, so Meg, you know Maine sculptor Clark Fitzgerald as your mentor early in your career. What did you learn from him that you've carried with you throughout the years?
Well, I think the most important thing that I learned from him was the importance of keeping a journal, and in that journal, recording all my observations, my experiences, all my creative inspirations and things, so that it keeps me very much in touch with myself and keeping my goals in place. But I think more importantly, just very solid work ethic, integrity, passion for life and art. And again, back to the curiosity for intellectual and creative and spiritual stimulation. He was someone that I had gone to apprentice with when I was trying to figure out what to do. And I came to more as that I intended to be a fashion designer. And I was a very accomplished seamstress. I had done a lot of work that way, and I came here and I did an introductory program, and I didn't think I would be happy in the program for a variety of reasons. And then I did textile design thinking, well, I already know how to sew, so if I can learn how to do textile design, I'm good. I'm just gonna go to Manhattan and open a store. And I wasn't happy in that program, again, for a variety of reasons. I think I was, young and impatient, but I just wanted to make things, and learning color theory, and I wasn't in tune with that. So he came down to do a big installation and wanted me to put a crew together to help him install it. And when he was here, he was a family friend, he was my parents' age, but someone who I had always really admired as someone who was just so dedicated and so hardworking and so talented. And I said to him, I don't want to leave school, but I can't figure out what I want to do. He said, oh, you know what to do. I think you just don't know how to talk to yourself. You don't know how to articulate it. So his criteria was that if I was going to come up and work with him, I had no time off. I worked when he worked, and I had to keep a journal. He said his goal was at the end of that period, I would figure out what I wanted to do. And really from that, I realized that while I wanted to be in art school, I wasn't inclined to be a fine artist. I wasn't inclined to being a painter or a sculptor. I really wanted to make things. And I think from working in his studio and learning wood and metal, I just fell in love with working with wood. So I think that, but I think that's one thing, but it's really led me, I think, to really being very dedicated to your art and continuing to stay very fresh and very connected.
Yes. Do you still keep a journal?
I do.
Yeah. Does anybody else keep a journal?
I keep 2 journals, yeah.
Okay. No? Well, when I started at Drexel, they said, you're going to carry a sketchbook around with a tape measure with you. And anytime you feel something, you're walking up a flight of stairs, they're very comfortable. Sit down, sketch it, measure it, note it. And likewise, if they're uncomfortable. So it is something that is a great tool for our students to keep in mind that it really is invaluable. Thank you. All right. So our next question is for Kim. And Kim, when I started working with you in Clinton a few years ago, I was sitting in your office one day and we were talking, and I looked at the wall, there was a poster of a bunch of union workers from the Depression protesting. And you had the art department superimpose on their signs, collaborate or die. And I asked you what that meant. And would you share with our audience this philosophy that you have and how it's worked for you over the years?
Well, I'm not sure what philosophy it is, but that was actually part of a movement that we had going at the time within the organization. And it came to a point where we were doing a lot of base building renovations and lobby renovations, and bringing in architectural commissions. And the architectural group was kind of making note of that. And we were starting to be utilized at the 11th hour on a lot of the interior architectural pieces of major architectural commissions. And it got to a point where it was who's going to do what on the building. I mean, there's always this back and forth struggle with the base building architect and what parts do they own. And there was a time they always did the cafeterias, right?
Yeah.
It's like, are you the public spaces? Yeah, exactly, the public spaces. Yeah, exactly, the amenities. And that was really near and dear to our hearts, and really felt that was more important in our bucket, if you will. And it was, my philosophy was if it doesn't get rained on, it's ours. So there was a big movement, and there was committees built, and there was a whole program that was developed for collaboration with architecture, because the idea was, how best do we serve our clients? How best do we get to the best product? And that really is really forged in Clinton Stubbins in the years that I was there, of who specializes. We got down to who specializes in this. I understand you did a cafeteria in 1980, I get that, or, but do you specialize in it? Like, have you done hundreds? And it became about who specializes, who lives and breathes in these types of spaces. And it was hard for them to argue not to give that work to us. And so there was a real amicable, I think, agreement at that time, where who really was representing the parts of a project so that we could collaborate and be real positive about that collaboration, and be supportive and have exchange of ideas and charrettes and just have a different level of camaraderie in the firm and collaborate on projects, which then ultimately gave us the best product at the end. You weren't slicing the project up as much as that's all been predetermined, who specializes. Now let's all do our best. Let's all put forth the best talent to do the best project for the client and serve both the client and the firm.
designers. But that really is how they get the best product. And I think we can all say that we've walked into a place and said, oh, this is architect's interiors. Somebody had picked out the paint fan and some vinyl base, and they're good to go.
It's gray, and it's gray.
And it's gray, yeah. When in doubt, always gray. Warm or cool,
Right.
that's the question.
Maybe white.
That
Yes.
kind of collaboration and keeping that at the center of your business model too is an extremely important message for clients to feel. They have to understand there's only one team. You're not, the client is on one team and you're in another team. You're all the same team. And I always give them football metaphors. So move the ball down the field, advance the ball, advance the ball. You're the quarterback, I'm the coach. You're the owner. And they kind of get it. And it makes people understand that even though you have very different roles, the goal is to get the ball across the net, into the hoop, across the net. It's all the same. And if they can see you keeping collaboration as the most important and one of the most fundamental aspects of the way you do business, they feel included. And again, it brings down the level of anxiety, and it also increases their stake in the outcome.
Kim, I think what you were driving at is at one point, interior designers were color pickers. You know, you'll pick the color, you'll pick the furniture, and we'll design, is what architects are saying. And that boundary has melted. And I think everyone at this table is involved in creating the full experience. No one at this table is relegated to being a decorator, design type, but they're fully involved in the experience. And I had lunch, one of the things we talked about is the question, you know, what pain do you solve for your clients? And I had lunch with a real estate developer, so I asked him that question, what pain does designers solve for you? He goes, well, when I'm working with firms, architects and interiors, and they don't understand that it's a joint experience, because I got all kinds of problems. You know, these spaces don't work, they don't feel good, they're not well. But when the interior designer and the architect works together from the beginning, and all the consultants, it's not just interior designers, it's AV, IT, lighting, acoustics, it's a whole, you can have 25 design professionals around the table, and they're all working together. Then you have a real experience, a volume of experience.
Yes.
And I think that's what you were doing. You're drawing the line. Right?
Yeah, it was about putting our best out there.
Sure.
And really putting forth that collaborative sense to the client and adding it to the project.
Yep.
Great, well, thank you. Karen, next question is for you. So I understand you've been working at the Philadelphia International Airport for over 30 years. And it comes back to what we were talking about the WBE. What was the first project that you did there, and how has your role evolved over the years?
So this is sort of a continuation of the story I started a couple questions ago. So on that first project, our role was to work with the team in a collaboration to create the design standards for the airport because they were beginning a renovation and expansion process. And so we were involved in creating, selecting the terrazzo materials that are on the floor and the tiles that were on the wall, and what would the check-in desks be like, and the podiums, and all of those standards. And when that project was completed, the director of aviation called me in and said that they were going to have another project coming up, and that they would like us, they actually suggested that we might want to team with a more technical architect locally, but that we would be the design lead, and that they would like to keep it as a local team rather than from Seattle and San Francisco and all the other team members that had been on that earlier project. And so from there, we made a team, we bid on the project, we won, and over a period of 30 years, we've been at the airport continuously, working on the interior environment, which is a real struggle, by the way. It's very hard to keep it current, it's very hard to coordinate, it's very difficult to get good contractors because they go with low bid. It's just, there are all kinds of challenges. You really have to be into pain to want to work at the airport. But I'd rather work at the airport than feel the pain of working on residential, because I'm really allergic to that. It takes a special, she's very zen. These two, no, seriously. So both of them are very zen, and so they can do residential, and I just want to wring their necks. In my entire 41 years in business, we've only done 2 residences, and they were 2 more than enough. So just to go on. No, they were not. It was not. No, yeah, that was a whole other story too. So in any event, right after 9/11, we were very heavily vested in hospitality and entertainment projects. We had really moved away. We weren't, because the economy had been going great, and we really weren't bidding on workplace projects for $1 or $2 a square foot, and we really weren't going after public sector, because we were working on these destination entertainment and destination hospitality and gaming projects where we were getting great fees, because when we were able to produce the wow, the client was able to get a greater return on investment, and therefore they more highly valued our services rather than it just being a commodity, let's say, of laying out 500,000 square feet of desk after desk after desk. And so it was horrible. Here we are with a full office, and everybody stopped traveling. So no one was going to hotels. Nobody was going to entertainment destinations. Like, the whole country stood still. So I went to talk with the director of aviation to ask about an RFP, a request for proposal that I knew was coming up. And it was for $35 million, and it was to create new security for Terminal D and Terminal E, and a new hammerhead at the end of E, which is an expansion at the end of the concourse. And he suggested to me that we consider going after it as the architect of record. Because he said, you'd have been here for 20 years at that point, or whatever it was, and you've been kicking butt for all the architects you've teamed with here, and I think it would be terrific to see a woman-owned firm be the lead, be a prime. And I just don't think we can do that. That's too big for us. I don't know, let me think about it. And I went back and I talked with our management team, and they said, what, are you crazy? They opened the door, we should do it. And so we put together an amazing team, and we worked day and night in creating a just over-the-top presentation, and it was flawless. And we won that project. And we have been on that project continuously for the last 12 years. We created a new master plan for those 2 terminals. We presented it on our own. It wasn't part of our scope. But the Division of Aviation embraced our suggestions, and today you will see that there is a whole new link between Terminals D and E, that's security and retail and new baggage handling. And that project grew to be a $350 million project where we were the prime. And so, ladies, I'm just saying to you that you've got to take that baby step, and you've got to be bold and try to get, your biggest piece of the project you can, because it's just a stepping stone to other things. If you have a passion for larger projects, and I think that's an important topic to talk about also, where, some people want to specialize in residential and some in boutique hotels, and some people really like doing, big wow projects, and they can all be wow, but we just like working on large projects. And so those are the kind of decisions you have to make very early on in your career, or, you try a little bit of each, try a couple different firms until you find your niche.
Mm-hmm. Great, thank you. All right, so Meg, as a business owner, you need to be a planner. And you've described yourself as a good short-term planner, but your approach to long-term planning is just to let it happen. So what is the fear that people should have if they don't have a plan?
Well, I wouldn't say that. I definitely have a plan in business. I think in talking to you about that more, it's that I like to always have a creative outlet. So I always leave things open for myself so that I don't feel trapped. I'm very hands-on. I like to do projects where I can be very hands-on. So we do projects that are very organized. I am very organized and very focused, and it's hard to describe, but I think that while the business has a plan and we do operate with
Yes.
a structure and a plan, I personally keep myself within that business very open to working on all kinds of things. Anything that comes, any opportunity that comes in, we consider it. We don't close the door and say we only do this or we only do that. We allow those things to come in and we do consider them. Now, we don't go after, if I wouldn't necessarily go out there and pursue a huge project but if someone came and gave it to us, we would consider them. And I find that for some reason that's what happens to us, is that things kind of land in our lap. And I think there's, I'm sure that there's a reason for that in terms of what we put out there or where we are. We do a huge amount of residential work, and quite a bit of our residential work comes from our commercial work. I think because our commercial work tends to be residential in feel. So we do get, when we did Start Bass, for instance, I had years worth of residential work from that project. So I think it's more that I don't do a structure that says I'm going to have 2 commercial projects and 2 hospital projects. I don't lay that out that way. When we get things that are brought to us, then we consider them and say, that feels like a good fit.
Yeah.
And Meg, don't you think also that it's that diversity that keeps your company healthy, and the fact that you can address different types of projects as they come in?
Yes, it is, and I think it's also just me personally, it keeps me stimulated.
I think it keeps everyone stimulated doing it. I think we feel exactly the same way. If you were just doing the same project type all the time, I think you would lose your passion for the business. But something that I think we also embrace, and Steve and I were just talking about this the other day, is how in the workplace today, we're finding more of a need to create a casual hospitality environment with more amenities, because we have more millennials entering the workforce. And so how people work is changing. It's much more collaborative, it's much more laid back, there's much more variety and options in how people work. And at the same time, in our hospitality practice, we find the need to incorporate more technology in the public spaces. People want to be together in the lobby, all plugged in and playing on their laptops and their iPads and their iPhones. And in the guest room, I personally travel with 4 devices. Must have 4 plugs. So we find you want all of that to be at your fingertips. And so I think it's that crossover. By working on different projects, the know-how and the knowledge and the experience that you bring from one project to the other, that's really blurring the lines, but making our lives more interesting and bringing our value added that we can bring to our clients.
Right, and I think the other thing with that is we were all talking about the collaborative process, that we can do so many different kinds of projects because we've cultivated those relationships. I'm sure we all have over the years with people who have the expertise. And so while we might have the relationship with the client and they might come to us. I remember a client who bought a private plane, and she said, I want you to do the interior of this plane, and it's arriving on such a day, and just go up there and meet with everybody. And okay. So, sitting in a room, and people would come in one by one, and, they would come in with their various trades.
Oh.
I'm I do the IT on the plane. They were ordering this new Bombardier, jet, and I knew nothing. My dad had been a pilot in the Navy, so I knew planes a little bit, but it was the same principles of how you go about it. It really was no different than what you do every day, except that I then needed to know what specification for things and what criteria. So I sat in there with them and said, I have no clue. I've never done this before, so you teach me. Tell me what I need to give you in order to do this. And, and the people can't wait to tell you. They like to share what they know.
Yes.
So you can do that project because it came from the trust of a client saying, I know you've never done a plane before, but I know you how to get things done. So I'm going to hand this to you, and you're going to get it done for me, and you're going to tell me when it's ready. So I think, and I guess that's what I mean talking to you, is that that kind of thing really excites me, because it's challenging and it's new, but it's the same principles of what you do and how you put a project together and how you organize it.
Jim, I think it's that agility that each one is talking about is why everybody's still sitting here.
Yes.
Hasn't dropped out.
Nimbleness and relentlessness.
Right, you have to persevere and you have to be agile. And with those two things, you can survive 30 years.
Yes. Well, and it's great for our students tonight to hear this from you women, because it is something that people want instant gratification. It takes years to develop a reputation, a brand, and then the project work to get the right amount of advertising and publicity for it. So it makes it very challenging. Now, Floss, you're one of the city's leading interior designers, and you're really in a position to give back to the community and to students. Would you share with our audience how you do give back to the community and what you do for our students?
Certainly. Well, one of the most important things that we do is to hire co-ops. I mean, they're really the gold of the firm. And all the young people who work for us are really the gold, because they have such a, they see the world through fresh eyes.
Yes.
So we're actually learning from them. And I can't say enough about that. So I've had co-ops from Florida, from Virginia, from Connecticut, I mean, all over the place. So we constantly have co-ops in our office. We've also, I established an award at Drexel for the senior who most likely will have her own business or his own business.
Oh, nice.
Because I don't think people acknowledge enough what it takes to have your own business. So actually, it's kind of interesting because it's not visual at all. They have to write. They have to write, when did they ever take a risk? What have they done for someone else? Right? So we have them write about it, because that's an important skill today that's kind of disappearing. So we judge, we have the staff will shorten the list, and then we'll get 4 or 5 letters, and then we'll read them. And then we'll pick someone. And it's always fascinating to see that it's usually one of the stars in the class, right, that has the visual to back it up. So that's one of the things we do. Well, I have at 4:30 on Fridays or Mondays we have yoga. So I give back to my staff and to young people by having free yoga classes. And if people want to come, as Karen said, we're very Zen-like. So you're welcome to come.
Right on parties. Yeah, we're very Zen too. Just ask anybody who's on our team.
I judged last night for the IIDA. They asked me to judge. That's a way of giving back. We have one of my marketing director supports construction, so she's really big about having food for the homeless, so we support that. One of my staff was walking for breast cancer. We support that. We support the craft show, the rock school. There's a Fleischer, so there's various ways that by money, time, and energy that we give back to the community.
Yes. Well, and thank you for that. All right, so Barbara, you mentioned, Karen.
I wanted to add something about interns, if I may. Over the years, we have recruited many people, and for a while, every once in a while, we'll hire a senior person, and rarely do they actually stick, because when you bring in someone who is very established in their ways and used to a certain kind of a firm, let's say a much larger firm, a lot of them have a hard time making the transition to a smaller firm where you have to be very hands-on. And over the last 7 years, what we started to do was to bring people in either as interns or as juniors and to train them with the thought that we really wanted them to stick. And we have been so fortunate that we had 3 young ladies who kind of arrived all within maybe a year or 2 of each other. And I'm extremely proud to say that they, this year, became associates within our firm. So they're now part of our management team. And it is a true delight and a pleasure to work with them because they do everything right. You know, I mean, they just do it the way we want them to do it. And you know, we look for that now. And we see a rising star in Shakira, who is our more intern. Come on, Shakira, stand up, let them see you. Shakira is a true gem and a delight and is a wonderful worker and very smart. And you know, we can see that Shakira might be somebody that we would want to have grow within our firm should she choose to do so. So I think the intern programs are extremely valuable and it is a wonderful way for us to give back. And we have every Wednesday in our office, we have a lunch and learn, and we alternate between lunch and learns from suppliers and lunch and learns where we have continuing education credits, so that our team are constantly learning about new materials and new technology and fresh ideas. And we also do a great deal of training in-house. You know, everything now is shifting to another technology called Revit, away from AutoCAD. And so we do those training sessions, or we'll send people out for training in these areas. And so we do a lot of continuing education. But we find that investment is worthwhile. And we also do Thursday night huddles, where we have wine and snacks, and we present. So if somebody goes to attend a particular conference, they then come back and they'll make a presentation to the rest of the team. And so it's that constant, you know, you may not go to this conference, you may go to the next conference, but we all share in the knowledge and the experience. And I think it's a wonderful way for us all to learn and to grow and to keep us all fresh.
Yes. Well, and I think Shakira just got a job offer. All right. So my next question is for Barbara. You mentioned the importance of community involvement, and not only just as a marketing tool, but as part of your passion of being a Philadelphian. Can you share with our students out here how important it is to get involved early in your career and community involvement?
Oh, yes, and I touched on it a little bit before, but it's important to draw a distinction between community pro bono activities, between professional development activities, and artistic institutions and music, art, everything. It's wonderful to find a balance with all of those, but you really need to put yourself out there in your field. These are the people who are feeding you. It's this city and this region that's feeding you, and you have to be able to give back to it too. And I don't mean joining a member or something. I mean chairing it. I mean leading the show. I mean committing to a leadership role, because ultimately that's going to help you even more than it's going to help the people that you're dealing with. And it's not a 1 hour a week thing. It's a 10 hour a week, every week thing. And those efforts that you put out now come back 100-fold, both for the organizations that you're working for and for yourself.
Yes. Well, what I like what you're saying about that also is that when people say, I'm going to join a committee, and they go for a couple meetings and they're done, they become perceived as very disingenuous.
Yes.
To actually say, I'm going to take 200 hours and I'm going to devote it to this committee. Yeah, you're doing a great cause, and also it is a good way for you to get yourself out there.
Exactly. Do it and mean it.
Mm-hmm. Great. I know we're running out of time. I have one last question for Meg. And so, Meg, today you're considered one of Philadelphia's most accomplished designers. In the 1980s, the Philadelphia Inquirer deemed you the queen bee of the entertainment unit. So, and we've been talking about this all day. For younger people that don't know what an entertainment unit is, it's a shelving unit that you put your flat screen in. That's an important distinction. So I wanted to ask you, is all press good press?
Well, it was at the time, because I was a woodworker, and so
Yeah.
getting more commissions for big, huge wall units was very positive. And back then, we would do wall units that had an aquarium, a bar, a TV, and you could live in there. And actually, the photograph of me was actually in the unit, like sitting in the unit that was so big. So I didn't, and I could have very selective memory, but I don't ever remember getting bad press.
Yes.
I mean, I think, you know, I don't personally remember something.
One tends not to remember those.
Right, I mean, I may have, I just am choosing not to remember it.
Yeah. Well, I think it's very fascinating that, you know, the way that people take press releases, or when you get press, use it as a marketing tool. You know, so it's really fascinating that you had that opportunity back in the 80s, and it's continued on.
I will actually add to that. The piece that they were writing about was actually the thing that kind of launched me into interior design for woodworking, because you were, I think Karen, you were mentioning the 90s being a time when things really crashed, and we experienced that same thing. So in the late 80s, early 90s, and I had about 21 people in my wood shop, and we were a big, thriving shop, but I had a huge job for Temple. We did the American wing at the museum. We did a lot of we worked for other architects. Projects got canceled, and we didn't have other things to put in their place. And I was very overextended. I bought a large warehouse in Kensington, and so I really, I didn't, you know, I had to reinvent myself. And that article actually was a huge opportunity for me because I got in somehow through a back door to do a unit at the Rittenhouse Hotel when they were doing the Women's Committee at the Pennsylvania Academy of Fine Arts was doing a benefit, and they chose 7 designers and architects to each do a unit. And somehow we got invited because I wasn't really known as being an interior designer, but I think it was because they wanted, you know, some flashy woodworking things, cabinets.
And entertainment.
Big entertainment. And so I put my whole heart and soul in it because I felt like I'd been given this opportunity. And David Marshall was the owner of the hotel at the time, and I went up and I interviewed him because that's how I always did things. We wanted to know, what are you looking for, and how are you, who are you trying to sell to, and who are your customers. And he had told me at the time no one else did that. Of all the people, not one architect came to him and said, what are you trying to achieve, and why are you doing this? And you know, I wanted to know if I want to make this successful for you. Because because we had a stipend. I mean, you weren't paid the whole thing, but you were given money, you know, to do things. And so it happened at the right time. And at the time, because we hadn't really done interior design, we were doing it, but I wasn't really visibly.
You were part of the team.
Right, but we were mostly a manufacturing business. And at the time, I was also going to open a store, so I had all these lines of furniture. So it all just kind of aligned. And shortly after that, things just crashed. And so all those contacts that I got from people coming into this unit gave me the chance to say, okay, I'm going to close this, I'm going to start this, and not go bankrupt, but just figure out a way to keep going. So that article actually was very good.
Yes. All right, so I see Donna, and so I'll turn things back over to you.
Yes, we'd like this time to turn the audience into the question askers. So if you have a question, please raise your hand. My lovely assistant Jen will also be the other person with the mic. So I know that especially students, you've been thinking a whole lot about what you had to say. If you have a question, just raise your hand and we'll come to you.
Can I interrupt also? And Stephanie Long, who's one of my students, in my professional practice class, I see you and she had a great question. So if you don't mind starting with her.
You're on, Stephanie.
I have part of teaching. I try.
I don't know which question you're talking about, but I don't know. I had a question of how did you know that designing was what you were supposed to do professionally? Like, how did you know it was your calling?
I knew because my parents had tried ballet lessons, they had tried gymnastic lessons, and then they wanted me to be a dentist. And I was horrible at math, and so it was kind of just by default. Now, all joking aside, I think it was because I was very artistic. I was drawn to the profession. But originally, I wanted to be a photographer. I really wanted to be a photography major. And my parents were worried that I wouldn't be able to make a living. And they were really encouraging in the way that they said, once you're finished college, you're on your own. And they wanted to make that very clear. And so they wanted to encourage me to pick a profession where they thought I could get a job. And so after photography came interior design. And so when I came to Moore, I was an interior design major and a photography minor. And I'm very happy with my choice.
Yes. Well, Barbara, I know that your educational background is in archaeology and art history. So how did that work?
And this is really such a funny story because my mother said the same thing. You'll never get a job, you'll never get a job, what are you going to do with that? And I kept saying, I'm being trained to think and to write. And that was correct. Really, I was scared to death that I wouldn't get a job. But then I met Karen Daroff in Chicago. We were working on a panel, and I had been writing about design and architecture, which is how we met. And I found myself moving to Philadelphia years later, worked for Karen for 2.5 years, then became the director of design for a real estate developer who said, well, get up there on the project and, bam, you're back in the mud, just like archaeology. I was back in design again. It was great. This time I knew how to make a living from it. And it's very interesting to watch how your interests align and intersect and come back full circle decades later. And make sense, because 3 years ago I was asked by the University Museum to do a part of a lecture series that they were doing on beauty. And they teamed me up with the curator of anthropology, and they said, okay, she's going to take 400,000 BC to 2000 BC, and you get to do 2000 BC to 2080 with the home environment. I said, oh gosh, okay, well I guess you're asking me because you know my background. They had no idea. I said, no problem, we could just roll right into this. So it was wonderful. And I called my mother and I said, you see? It's a good question.
Yes. Next. There's hands.
My question's for anybody who listens hard to answer it, but picking up on the importance of dedicating your time to community and other activities. I was just wondering if any of you have advice for, with our tight project deadlines and the amount of hours that we work, how you balance that work life.
I can answer. Sleep less.
Well, you know the saying, if you want to get something done, ask a busy person. Because you have to be organized. In our businesses, you have to be organized. There's so many things coming at you from so many different angles.
I also think you need to pick something that you might do anyway.
Right.
Something that you're really, that you're just really interested in, you're really passionate about.
Yeah, one of the things we do is we have the annual student design competition. And that came out of, my teaching for years, and then with my travel, I needed to stop teaching. But I really still want to be involved and help the students and bring them into the profession. And I had hired a lot of my students, and I think that program in and of itself is a great platform to reward, celebrate, acknowledge young design talent and introduce them to all of you. We're invited every year to the annual award ceremony. So please participate in that if you can. We're 13 years running now, and
And I think it's your legacy, Kim. I think it's a wonderful give back to the community. It's really
Yes. Well, what's interesting, also.
great recruiting. We hire all our winners, by the way.
You've got a little pipeline going there.
Yeah, absolutely.
From a personnel standpoint. But we've all enjoyed attending the award ceremony over the years, and it is your legacy. And it really has been an opportunity for a lot of students, my students, to participate in, that's time management. You've got 8 hours to do the whole thing. And I have to say, when you're asking about deadlines, when I first met Kim, I met you about 5:30 in the evening. We walked in the studio and there was no one there. I never worked at a firm that everybody wasn't working till midnight. And I said, where is everybody? She said, if you run the business properly, they get to go home. So the family said, fine.
Have a family.
That's why I'm here. Yeah. So, but thank you. All right, next question.
My question is your thoughts about the current legislation that's coming through Pennsylvania. The Interior Design Coalition, Legislative Coalition of Pennsylvania is pushing this stuff through, and how that's been going on for a while, and just how you think that would affect your businesses, your careers.
I think it's a good thing. I think it's a really good thing. And I think it's been really disappointing that it's taken so long to even have any momentum to it at all.
I think we all agree. At least I agree very much.
Yes. And I would encourage everyone to be NCIDQ certified. So as soon as you get out of school, do the test. Don't wait.
It only gets harder.
Right.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting. In my professional practice class, we were talking about the legislation, and the excuse that a lot of these state representatives did is nobody's really asking for it, and nobody will get hurt. And that's when my students, we just got into a whole discussion about what we do as interior designers. Life safety is a big issue, and it really should be set aside for people that are considered maybe a decorator, or don't have the technical skill that we have.
I think there's some people that don't want us to be licensed.
Yeah.
So they're fighting
The
it.
elephant in the room. Right. Nobody's going to say. Right.
We all know who.
We know the deal.
But that's a great question, thank you.
Yes.
And I also see,
Derek.
oh, good. And then I see Teresa, who I know has a good question.
Hello. This may be more so for those that are residential interior designers. But we live in a society that there's an influx of DIY. Everyone watches HGTV and thinks they can try their hand at being a designer. How, as a residential designer, do you handle that client that thinks they may know what they want or how to do something?
Okay, Barber, it's yours.
Well, I remember hearing a lot of colleagues frantic when resources started to become very open and available on the internet, and said, oh my God, how are we going to protect our businesses? And I said, if all you're doing is selling product, you should be out of business. It's not what you do as a designer. I gave someone an example, maybe it was you, Jim, the other day. I know how to speak English, I know how to write English, I have a command of the English language, but I can't compose a sonnet like Shakespeare. Just because I know those words doesn't mean I can create a composition that sings. And what we do as designers is a very integrated, comprehensive composition that has to be able to stand the test of time and stand on its own legs. And it is not just about, do I know where to buy this, or do I know how to hammer a nail in, or what a ground molding is. Actually, if you take it the right way and do the right things with those clients, that can be somewhat empowering. I mean, I came from a big, huge, crazy family where everybody needed to know how to do everything, and I mean it. You had to sew your own clothes, you needed to know carpentry, electrical wiring, how to fix a car, so that's wonderful, but you also have to know the place for that, and you need to make people feel like you're going to listen to their ideas, take their interests into account, and help them along a path that will get them much farther than they would have gotten themselves.
Yes, it's a talent to have a client show you several pictures of, I want this, 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 and this. Well, in the designer's head, they're looking at those pictures, but they're designing something totally different that is actually what the client is trying to communicate to you. I can't, it's hard really to articulate it, but you get a talent of understanding. Somebody might be showing you a colonial house, but really what they want is something totally different. And that's through a process of listening.
And it's a lot like writing, actually, because you're taking what they're telling you, and you think you have trouble putting aesthetic concepts into verbal communication. They're really having trouble. And you have to take those kernels of ideas and expand them big enough that you're excited as a creative individual, and they recognize in that what they asked for. And then, then you start that process of editing and expanding and eventually together, and that's the key.
The best, really.
Together you get to a fantastic result.
I think it goes back to something I think you said earlier, Barbara, too, that the client's part of your team. So, really, there's no threat in, a client or anybody else on the team. There's nothing threatening about that. But really, I think it's something.
It's actually dangerous if they're not.
No, I think it's better if someone's very engaged. I mean, a good project, you want to be engaged.
Well, I have to say the gentleman that asked the question, I think it's Derek out there, I was fortunate enough to buy his chair at Take a Seat on Friday night. So I told him he needs to become very famous, because that's going to fund my retirement.
Well, and I told him that he should get you to sign the bottom of the chair.
I need to have you sign the chair.
Got it.
But, afterwards, we're going to have an opportunity for you to meet everyone. So I'd like for people to say hello to Derek, because he's a very, very talented young gentleman. Great. And let's see.
I was wondering about inspiration, and if you have any way that you gather inspiration for certain projects, or if it just kind of comes to you based on what the project is about, or if you have a process for that.
Could you say it again a little louder?
Sorry. Inspiration for projects and how you gather inspiration, and if there's a process for it, or it just comes to you based on what the project is about.
I'll take that one. When we first started working with Wayne Chow at Disney, he taught us a process that we call storyboarding. And in order to present to Michael Eisner, who was then the head of Disney, we would have to create these very, very elaborate storyboards. And they were made up of images that responded to a narrative that we were given. We would have a written program. Like for Dixie, it was a Mississippi River town theme, and it went on and on. And so we would research images in books at that time, and now we do it on the web, and we put together, it's almost like a collage of ideas and options within that idea that begin to kind of create a snapshot of the image that we're visualizing. And it works beautifully because as designers, we don't have to go all the way down the road and then find that we haven't communicated with our client. It allows us very, very quickly to communicate, and it's an interactive process, so it engages the client in a dialogue. And through that dialogue, we begin to refine what the design direction is. So as an example, we're about to begin the renovation of the historic family court just across the street here and turn that into a Kimpton hotel. And we're meeting with our client next week to try to establish the design direction for the interiors. And we're not really sure because we don't want it to be a typical Kimpton. It's been a very clear direction. And so what is right for that hotel? Should it be historic? We don't think it should be a slavish recreation of a historic period. Should it be very edgy modern? Well, how do you make it completely sympathetic to the historic fabric of that building? Or what should it be? And so in order for us to begin this communication, we'll develop several different storyboards with several different palettes, and it will allow us to very quickly begin to get feedback. Because, I think that both of you said sometimes it's very difficult for a client to verbalize what they're looking for. And frequently they don't even know what they're looking for. It's like they have to see something that triggers a spark, and then we can wrap our minds around that design direction.
Kim, do you find that storyboarding works as well in corporate?
Yes, we definitely do that as well. Because we do mostly corporate, but we have gotten into a lot of hospitality. It's going back to diversifying the practice. Back after 9/11, we had a lot of eggs in the corporate basket, and purposely diversify the practice to get into other areas. And also it's sort of exciting for your design staff to enter into other fields. And there's that cross-pollination that's happening with hospitality and corporate and healthcare and higher education, as we were talking about earlier. I'm sorry.
No, and so I think even in workplace, we're using storyboarding now.
Yeah, the storyboard we're using for workplace. We have very sophisticated visioning sessions that are associated with images, and the images represent their vision, their culture, getting down to their business values. So you're really identifying who they are as an organization. What are their key objectives? Where do they want to take their firm with that renovation or that new facility? And all of that starts with really images, and you get a dialogue going, and you start to really uncover a lot of things about what they want that facility to do, how they want to affect constituents that are coming to that facility.
There are certain clients whose work is very prescriptive. I'm sorry. There's certain clients whose work is very prescriptive, and they will have established standards and guidelines, and then you kind of work within that box. But today, well, they know what they're doing and they know what works for their demographic. But there's certain projects where they really want to explore what is appropriate for that context, for their demographic, for what is evolving, what is the next gen going to need and want. And so that's when this storyboarding process is really great, because you can throw a whole bunch of ideas out there and you can explore how far can you push the envelope.
Yeah,
Floss.
Floss, you
A
wanna
place
add?
to jump off, all the greats have said, it has to do with the geography, the place, the site, the culture, the people who are going to use it. So all these are clues about how to even have a jumping off point before you even get to storyboards. So just observe. They'll talk to you.
And listen.
Yeah, and listen.
There's a great deal of research that should be done in the beginning of a project. There's the listening to the client that I think Barbara and Floss have expressed. And then there is the research into the geography, the contextual environment, or the story, or whatever it is. And that's just as important as when you begin to design, because it gives you a foundation.
And I will add one thing that I know I do personally as I watch movies. I do a lot of looking at things to get, especially for doing restaurants, to get myself, really kind of into the sense of that, or just try to get myself, really just mentally inspired. So I remember we were doing Striped Bass, I rented Indochine and The Lover and Lawrence of Arabia. I was trying to find Moorish, very romantic, a place where I wanted someone to come in off of Walnut Street and feel like, wow, where did I, I'm no longer, I came out of work and I'm just now completely back down to earth again. So trying to get myself into that mood. Movies have always been something that we do, or we were doing Susanna Fu. I rented all the Raise the Red Lantern and then sketched all those lanterns, because I was trying to find some really authentic pieces, no sets. There's the set design is fabulous. So it's a great way to see things. Then it was something that was fun for all of us to do. Because it would just get the whole team kind of excited. So that's something we do a lot.
Well, I hate to say this, but I think we're really running out of time. We're gonna just have to do this again.
I think we should make it a monthly experience.
Well,
Monthly is good,
the month is fine.
but next year we're going to come
Next
back. I
year,
have more
you know,
questions.
We have, I apologize, we can't get to everyone's questions. Again, I want to thank you all from the bottom of my heart for joining us on this evening. Everyone, it's been an honor to share this event. I hope everyone has the opportunity to really take away with them the magnitude of these women's involvement in this profession and how they've influenced design, education, the city, beyond. It's really amazing. I really want to thank everyone from the bottom of my heart for coming tonight. And if we do it again, everybody's welcome to come back. There's a reception right outside the door. Please enjoy yourselves. Thanks.